remembering one atrocity to condemn another. Today, the US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, laid a wreath at the site of a Nazi massacre in Italy.
We remember the events of August 12, 1944 that occurred in Sant'Anna.
But he then drew a direct link with last week's chemical weapons attack in Syria.
And we rededicate ourselves to holding to account any and all who commit crimes against the innocents anywhere in the world.
The American Foreign Affairs chief is in Italy for a meeting of the Western powers that make up the G7. The aim, to find a common position to put pressure on the Russians to think again about their backing for President Assad. Rex Tillerson had an hour of talks with Boris Johnson, where possible sanctions against the Russians were discussed.
The message that we're sending to the Russians is very, very clear. Do they want to stick with a toxic regime? Do they want to be eternally associated with a guy who gasses his own people? Or do they want to work with the Americans and the rest of the G7 and indeed the like-minded countries for a new future for Syria?
But it's a very different view from Moscow. Russian television has shown pictures of the Syrian airfield hit by American missiles on Friday. They've called it an act of aggression, and they've ramped up the rhetoric. One message posted by the Russian embassy in London said, "If G7 ultimatum to Russia brings us to real war, what is your trust in Donald Trump as a wartime leader and Boris Johnson as his lieutenant?" Russian forces in Syria mean a military move against Assad is difficult, but there's also real concern about what could follow his removal.
You know, if they were to remove Assad somehow, even assuming the Russian problem wasn't there, you'd probably be left with a sort of Libya on steroids, i.e. it all going into chaos for the next couple of years, and then commentators sitting around going, well, you know, you made this mess, how could you not have had a plan?
This photo released by the White House shows President Trump on Air Force One phoning to thank the crews of the US warships which launched Friday's missile attack. That was a surprise, but what has it really changed?